Nature versus nurture, a topic that has been discussed over centuries. Whether a species' genetic makeup and ability overpowers their environment and who they are raised by. My topic is, what impact does nature versus nurture have on criminal behavior? The initial use of the nature versus nurture theory was created by psychologist Sir Francis Galton in 1869. The question regarding nature versus nurture theory has yet to be answered. The research on nature and nurture history has evolved through the years, and many researchers have come up with multiple ideas and answers. I, Kamden Edwards, believe that both nature and nurture have a great impact on criminal activity and human actions, but nurture impacts criminal behavior more. Religion alone has a major impact on humans' decisions and actions and behaviors. The graph here shows the genetic and environmental influence on religion, and as you can see from the graph, the most influential topics are genetic and external environment, and in the middle it's family environment. Family environment and external environment both go into the nurture aspect, while genetic goes into the nature aspect of the topic. This graph alone shows how much the nurture impact takes more of a toll on humans than the genetic impact in religion and other topics such as criminal behavior. On the nature side of the debate, many people believe that genes and genetic makeup has just as much of an impact as nurture. This graph is people's opinions on how much genes influence intelligence. Now, this graph doesn't specifically talk about criminal behavior, but one's intelligence has a lot to do with one's decision making. 22% of people believe that no genes influence intelligence, while another 39% believes that very little and some influence intelligence, while the other 39% believes that a lot and just about all of their genes influence intelligence. All human genes are different, but some have special genetic makeup and disorders that make them different. Some of these are pretty common, but need to be treated like any other. An effective gene that contributes to human behavior is the monoamine oxidase A, known as the MAOA gene. This gene triggers behaviors, and psychologists look for this when studying various behavior differences in their subjects. Studies have been done on criminal subjects to test their MAOA gene and normal humans to test if they may tend to do criminal-type behavior. Dr. Adrian Rain, a psychologist who has done many studies on the topic, talks about his beliefs.
Penn Integrates Knowledge professor explores why people commit violent crimes. He uses an interdisciplinary scientific approach and modern brain scanning technology to look for clues.
Dr. Rain, can you really tell if someone will be a violent criminal just by looking at their brain scans?
It's not perfect prediction by any means, but yet we're getting some information, added value over social and behavioral predictors about who's going to become a violent offender, whether it's poor functioning in the frontal region of the brain or a low resting heart rate, or the fact that they had birth complications early in life which damaged the brain, or the mother smoked or drank during pregnancy. These are all factors, biological factors, that are combining with social factors to give us a better understanding of the causes of crime. And once we can understand the early factors that go to shape violence and crime, we are going to be in a much better position to be able to predict it in the future. And brain imaging research is right now giving us information, again, over and above the usual predictors of which individuals are going to commit a violent offence in the next 3 to 4 years.
So you could look at a number of statistics about an individual and say, well, they are more likely to commit crime than someone else. What does that mean? What should we do with that information then?
Well, it's never going to be perfect prediction, but nevertheless, today, every day, we make decisions on which prisoners to let out of prison. Or an offender, do we put them into prison or do we give them community service? We need to assess their dangerousness levels. And right now we do it on the basis of just demographic and social factors like, are they male? How old are they? What's their employment record like? But now we're finding that individuals with a reduced volume of the amygdala, the emotion region of the brain, those individuals are going to be 4 times more likely to commit a violent act in the next 3 years. And that's taking into account their prior behavior and their demographic information. So we're getting added value in terms of prediction. And given we have to make the judgments every day, why not add in extra information if our decision making is going to be better? That's what I try and argue for in The Anatomy of Violence, a better understanding of the causes of crime, better prediction, and ultimately new intervention and prevention programs.
I personally got to interview my expert, Greg Bowles, a probation officer who deals with numerous amounts of criminals and sits in on multiple court cases. Here were some of his thoughts on the nature and nurture debate.
Hi, my name is Greg Bowles, and I'm assisting Kamden with his senior project this year, and he's asked me to answer 5 or 6 questions regarding his senior project. And the first question is, what is an educated guess on how many criminals you deal with that have some type of disorder? I would say that approximately 7% of the juveniles that we serve here at Hamilton County Juvenile Court have some type of disorder. Those disorders range from ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, clinical depression, anxiety disorder, opposition defiant disorder, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, mood disorders, autism, and post-traumatic stress disorder, which is PTSD. And most of our kids who have been abused or kids who are in gangs tend to experience the PTSD. As a probation officer, I've also seen where nature plays a part in a child's criminal behavior. For example, I've seen a probationer who has never met his or her biological parent, but act just like that parent. And I believe that's where genes and hereditary plays a part in their behavior.
The topic of race and gentrification should also be recognized in the nature versus nurture debate. The race goes into the nature aspect, while gentrification goes into the nurture aspect. This is a problem in criminal activity/behavior because when a specific race is put in a certain environment, it causes discrimination and can cause an effect on the outcome of someone's life. Mr. Greg Bowles shares his thoughts on gentrification.
And the 6th question is, do you think gentrification has an impact on nature versus nature debate? Yes, it does, because gentrification, when it happens, it can affect nurture right away. Gentrification changes the cultural standards of the neighborhood by cleaning up the neighborhood's rubbish or weeds out drugs. An example of gentrification here in Chattanooga is the downtown area and the neighborhoods off Main Street. These neighborhoods were low-income areas. They were dirty, they were high-crime areas, and drug-infested. Gentrification weeds out crime, which will affect nurture almost right away. Gentrification also encourages the old or current structures to improve. But the racial component must be considered. Gentrification can affect nature as well by allowing one to be born in an enriched neighborhood.
Similar to gentrification, this is how nurture goes into play on criminal behavior. Nurture is how and where one is raised. This has the most impact on a person and how they act. According to Science News, boys who exhibit neurological and motor problems as infants and who grow up in unstable families commit many more crimes as young adults than do boys who encounter only one alleged risk factor for later crime. Miss Shirley Baker, another expert who served as a case manager in the Department of Children Protective Services, talks about nurture, her job experience as she was around parents who were fit and who were unfit for the kids' environment.
Okay, my name is Shirley Baker, and I am here to help Kamden Edwards with his senior project. I worked for the Department of Children's Services for 36 and a half years, and during my time period there, I held many hats. I determined eligibility for food stamps, AFDC, Medicaid, which eventually became TennCare. I determined which persons would be eligible to be foster parents. I recruited and I trained those persons. I also was a part of Child Protective Services twice. Prior to retiring, I was in the assessment unit. In CPS, or Child Protective Services, is divided into two divisions: assessments and investigations. Assessment does the non-severe cases of abuse, whereas investigation does the severe cases such as murder, incest, when a child has a broken bone, things like that. During my time working at Children's Services, I talked to people from just about every socioeconomic group there was. I spoke with blacks or African American people, white people, Indians, Hispanics, Asian people. Most of the times when I spoke with these people, first their children, it was normally at a school, because we considered that a neutral environment, and a lot of times if the child was not in their parents' eyesight or hearing distance, they were more likely to give you an honest answer. During my many years of working with families, there were some families who had criminal history. And Cam wanted me to give an educated guess about how many persons had criminal history. Well, I would probably have to say 50%, but most of the criminal history was because of minor offenses, traffic violations, more or less. But of course, I had a few that had committed murder, a few who had committed incest, some who severely abused their children, and some who didn't abuse their children that much. Some things that parents did that were considered criminal that Child Protective Services did not remove the children for had to do with smoking marijuana. And you may be surprised, but our thing was if it didn't interfere with their parenting skills, then there was nothing that we would do. And normally when drugs start interfering with a person's parenting skills, that means they've done it for several years. And I can say at least 30 to 40% of persons that were 40 and below smoked marijuana or had smoked marijuana at some time. Yet most of those persons would not let things like that interfere with their parenting skills. What normally interfered with their parenting skills was a person that did, of course, meth, cocaine, heroin, things like that. But again, if they could be helped, and the children were deemed safe. And we came up with a plan that was workable, where we both could see that the child was safe. We would leave that child in the home. Again, criminal history, I would have to say at least 50% of the clients had criminal history. And if we were looking at criminal history by race, I would have to say that since African Americans are over-policed, and statistics bear that out, that they probably were more likely to have criminal history than, say, white people or Hispanic people. Even though it seemed like a lot of my Hispanic clients, most of their criminal behavior had to do with traffic violations. And do I think nature or neuter, impacts criminal behavior? I'm kind of looking at this as questions as I speak to you. Being loved, feeling like you are somebody, often helps steer you from criminal activity. However, peer pressure can make even the best child stray. Nurturing, though, will probably keep them from being lifelong criminals.
The next few questions that were asked to the experts were comparisons between nature and nurture, and here were some of their responses.
The fifth question is, what level do criminals who have a disorder rank from criminals in a not so great environment? Whether one has a disorder or not, the environment in which one is in plays a huge part in one's behavior. So if a person resides in a low crime environment, that person is less likely to commit a crime than a person in a high crime environment.
Another question being asked is, does bad parenting rub off on the children? I would have to say it depends, because a lot of times parents raise children the way they were raised. If they think a child should be seen but not heard, when that child grew up to have children, a lot of times they thought the child should be seen and not heard. Even though today children are given a lot more freedom in expressing themselves, because at one time it was like children had no rights, so the parents could more or less or almost do anything they wanted to do with them, and that's not how it is. I don't think it was that way then, and it definitely is not how it is now. But a lot of the behaviors nowadays is because we have so many babies having babies. We have babies, teenage girls having babies, even though there are so many different birth controls around, and a lot of them are having them at younger ages. And then the grandparents who are young grandparents and think they're too young to be grandparents are not given the support that grandparents once gave. So again, a lot of behaviors are learned, you know. But again, like I said, I've seen it so many other times that you can put so much in their head. You can teach them right from wrong, but peer pressure is a real stressor for children. But in the Bible, we talk about the prodigal son, eventually those lessons that are taught by the parents will come back sooner before the child gets out too far in delinquent or bad behavior that they can be saved, more or less.
My final question for the experts were whether they believed that nature or nurture had more of an impact on criminal behavior, and here were their final responses.
Do you think nature or nurture impacts criminal behavior more? I believe nurture has more of an impact on criminal behavior, mainly because nurture is how one is raised, and youth usually imitate what they see, which it becomes a learned behavior. They tend to do or become what they are seeing day in and day out. I tell juveniles all the time, the old saying is, you are who you hang with. Or better yet, if you show me your friends, I show you your future.
Do I think nature or impacts criminal behavior? I'm kind of looking at this questions as I speak to you. Being loved, feeling like you are somebody, often helps steer you from criminal activity. However, peer pressure can make even the best child stray. Nurturing, though, will probably keep them from being lifelong criminals.
The nature versus nurture theory can be solved through just a few actions by society. Everyone should try their best to keep their environment a great one to live in and surround themselves and their children around positive things. Environment/nurture can affect genes and nature and vice versa. If someone is affected by nature, you have to work harder on the nurture aspect and vice versa. If you don't work to nurture someone well, then nature can be affected. Both factors play a critical role. Not only that, but they also realize that nature and nurture interact in important ways all throughout life. Both nature and nurture work together all throughout one's life, but the causes of crime lie in the combination of predisposing biological traits channeled by social circumstances into the criminal behavior, which refers back to nurture that impacts criminal activity/behavior more.